Here's an example of a linked list of integers. First, I define a struct with fields to store some data. Here, that's a simple int and a pointer. Note that the pointer points to a data item of the same type as the struct itself. Here I've called that list item. It's my intention to create a list of structs with each struct containing an integer value and a pointer to the next element, that's the next struct in the list. In my program I create two pointer variables, listHead and temp. And at the start I set listHead to null. To help show what's going on here, I've written this into a spreadsheet. And here it is. Now, at the moment, this is very, very simple, of course. All I've got here is the note that listHead is equal to null. Simple it is at the moment, I know that, but things are soon going to get a whole lot more complicated, so bear with me while we look at the rest of the code. Okay, so now I execute this for loop. And what that does, it creates and initializes three list item structs, allocating the correct amount of memory for each using malloc. And I initialize the data field of each struct to the integer I, and that's from 0 to 2 as the for loop executes. And then I assign listHead to the struct's next pointer, which I declared earlier on, and that's, as we know, set to null. But let's keep track of this carefully. So let's go back to my spreadsheet. And so at the first turn through the loop, this is what we've got. We have my struct pointer temp pointing to a struct with data equals 0, and its pointer, the next pointer, pointing to what listHead points to, which here is null. Now finally in my code I've the temp pointer here is assigned to the listHead pointer. So back in my spreadsheet I make that adjustment. This is now the situation we have. listHead points to that struct, and its pointer points back to null. Now on the next turn through the loop, another struct is created. Its data field is assigned the value 1 because the loop variable I has now been incremented to 1. Its next pointer once again points to listHead, which points to the last struct we created. So in my spreadsheet we now have this. And again the listHead pointer is updated at the end to point to the newly created struct. So this is how things stand now. On the second turn through the for loop, the listHead pointer points to the struct containing 1, which points to the struct containing 0, which points to null. And the same thing is repeated on the third turn through the loop. So we end up with something like this. The listHead pointer now points to the last struct we added, whose data field is 2. Its next field, which is a pointer, points to the previous struct we added, whose data field is 1. Its pointer points to another struct whose data is 0, and its pointer points to null, which is the end of the list. And let me run the program. So I execute this while loop to trace through the list from the last item I added, which is at the head of the list, right back to the first item I added. Its next pointer points to null, so I know I've come to the end of the list, and the loop exits. Notice that in this program I've added each new struct to the beginning of the list. You can, of course, add them to the end of the list if you prefer, but it's easier and usually more efficient to add elements, as I have done here, to the start of a list.